Hi, I'm Lauren Yates, and this is my reading synthesis project. So what I started with was a little graphic organizer about the big five of reading, and these are kind of the overarching concepts that students will learn while reading. And it starts with decoding, which is word recognition and comprehension. And you can see the things that stem from that are phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and text comprehension. So first I'm going to start with phonological awareness, and that's in the big five. So what are phonological and phonemic awareness? So phonological awareness is the awareness of language before reading and writing ever happen. And phonemic awareness is the ability to focus on and manipulate individual sounds and phonemes in spoken words. And phonemic awareness occurs later on in phonological awareness when students know sounds well enough to be able to determine those individual phonemes. And these terms are not interchangeable. They're not the same. A lot of people think they are, but they're different. And this is like an umbrella model that kind of represents phonological awareness and all that it covers. And phonemic awareness falls under the umbrella of phonological awareness because it occurs later on during the phonological awareness process. Okay, so now back to the big five, moving on to phonics, which is under decoding and word recognition. So phonics is an instructional method or a strategy for teaching students that involves matching letters to their sounds to decode the words. So this kind of teaches students how to use the relationships between individual sounds or the phonemes, printed letters, and how to use that knowledge to read and spell. And it emphasizes the relationship between letter and letter combinations and how they sound out in written form. So this kind of shows what is involved in phonics, and it's the alphabetical principle, which is the principle that words are made up of letters and that these letters represent sounds. And phonemic awareness, which we talked about earlier, was the ability to manipulate the sounds in a word. So we teach phonics. It can either be taught systematically, which means you're introducing letter-sound relationships, and as you introduce them, they get increasingly more challenging. And it can also be taught synthetically, which means the teacher is providing those opportunities intentionally to focus on specific phonics rules. Like with my student that I worked with, she struggled with blending initial consonants, and so I did an activity where I would underline each letter of the word, and I would point to it, and she would say each individual phoneme sound of that word and then blend it all together. So again, back to the big five, moving on to vocabulary, which you'll notice falls under comprehension. And there are 4 different types of vocabulary. You've got your speaking vocabulary, what you can use in conversation, listening, what you can comprehend while you hear stuff, reading, the words you can recognize with understanding, and writing, the words you use while you're writing. So vocabulary influences comprehension because a rich vocabulary increases comprehension and learning across all content areas, and it's a key factor. Reading is a key factor that increases vocabulary, and independent and shared reading greatly increase students' exposure to that new vocabulary. Moving on to text comprehension, which falls under comprehension. Comprehension relates to reading. There are a lot of 2 different processes, but they're actually connected processes. And without comprehending, a reader may still read through a text, but they're not processing the information in a meaningful way. And we're going to look at the wheel of strategic actions to talk about text comprehension. First is thinking within the text. And so the strategies for thinking within the text, one that I used with my CSS was searching for and using information. And I used that during a lesson that was focused on using illustrations in books to decode unknown or newly introduced words. There's monitoring and self-correcting. I use that with my student too, such as semantic meaning, asking them, does that make sense? And to guide them in self-correcting errors. Solving words, maintaining fluency, adjusting, and then summarizing. Now thinking about the text, you've got analyzing, which I used in a lesson as well. The lesson was focused on fluency, but I had the student analyze the guided reading text we were working with for repeating structures in the author's writing. And then you've got critiquing, which is thinking critically about the text. Now thinking beyond the text, the strategies you have are inferring, synthesizing, which is what I'm doing now, making connections, and predicting. And factors that affect reader comprehension can be the student's background or prior knowledge, connections to their own experience, their vocabulary, fluency, motivation is a lot involved in that. And I assess my students' comprehension skills using things like the PAST assessment, those kinds of things. So now we're going to move on to fluency, and notice how fluency stems from both decoding and comprehension on the Big Five. So fluency is the ability to read quickly, accurately, expressively, and with comprehension. And so fluency helps to bridge that gap between word recognition and comprehension by bringing the two together. And a fluent reader can read an appropriate rate, silently and orally. They engage in automaticity, which is the ability to quickly and accurately recognize words. And children need a great amount of practice reading texts that are at their independent reading level to develop those automaticity skills. They also use prosody, which, while reading orally, is the ability to use appropriate pitch, stress, expression, phrasing, all that. So now I'm going to move on to sharing what interactive, shared, guiding, and independent reading are. So what are they and what do they look like in the classroom? Interactive reading is the teacher doing a read aloud of the text to the students, and the students are thinking about the text as they listen. And then in shared reading, an interactive reading experience such as a read aloud, it occurs when students join in or share the reading of the text while they're being guided and supported by the teacher. Guided reading, which was an important component to teaching phonics, is when students are in these smaller groups. They're reading the same text. They're listening to others read and reading along when they're asked. The teacher is guiding students in using various strategies to solve words, decode, increase their comprehension, and learn specific phonics rules. And then you've got independent reading, where students are independently reading the text the teacher selected or they selected themselves. And different strategies can be used, such as using the pipe phones or students silently reading. And during this time, students are expanding their vocabulary and building their comprehension skills.